All right. So the next topic is about mainstreaming. So parents always, one of the big goals is, of course, to mainstream their autistic child with neurotypical peers. So, what was your experience growing up? Were you mainstream? Were you educated in a special education classroom? So, what's your take on that?
So when I was younger at primary school, which is like kindergarten for you, I stayed in mainstream and I was really happy because I felt like a king. Everybody was friends with me. I was really, really popular. And then went to secondary school, which is about, it was just when I was getting diagnosed, it's 10 or 11, and it went wrong, dramatically wrong. And I ended up really struggling. People wouldn't accept me. They were starting to be more, because they were getting older and starting to get wiser, they were starting to be more judgmental to why
Mm.
I wasn't the same as them or similar to them. My take on mainstream is if your child is coping, happily coping, not just coping, but happily coping and enjoying themselves, leave them to it. If they're struggling, step in and step in soon because it will only get worse. Mine just got worse so quickly because at that age, kids follow each other. So if one picks, the other pick, they all just keep having a go and having a dig. And if you imagine that I used to have like 30, 60, 90 people all in the same year having a go at me at the same time, and there was nothing I could do about it. But I then went to another mainstream school, which had a separate classroom, one-to-one, and that was magic, and it worked. So I was in mainstream, but I was being educated in the way I needed to, which worked. Some people have homeschooling, which I don't always agree with because I feel like homeschooling takes the social aspect completely out of it. Unless you specifically go out your way to make sure your child interacts with people during the day, where do they get the socializing from? So yeah, very complex conversation, but
It is very complex.
yeah.
Well, I like what you experienced both. You were mainstream, but you were also given a more another environment where you had one-on-one attention, where you could feel successful learning the coursework. So I think combination educational classroom setting would be good, but I like your reminder of following your child's lead. So really paying attention. Um, and I think as a parent and a professional, I would say think about the gap. So the gap, when I talk about the gap, it's not just the academic goals. So for people who have information processing difficulties, and you just need time to process, and everyone was is functioning ahead of you, that's not a good feeling. So if the academic gap is big, then that's gonna kind of have a domino effect. It's going to affect your confidence being in a mainstream situation. So that's one kind of gap, but also in terms of communication gap. So imagine if you can understand what people are talking about you or talking, but you just can't understand everything that's going on around you because you're not as verbal as everyone else. That can't be good.
No.
To be exposed every day um, in a classroom where everyone was just so much more advanced and ahead of you. So that can't be good for anyone, actually.
It's a very quick way to have your mental health deteriorate, and it's a very, very good way for depression to kick in. The amount of times I was demoralized during the time I was in school when I didn't do anything wrong, I was just trying to be me, but I didn't even know who I was at that point in time. And my mum and dad were trying to get me out of it, but the school was just reluctant. They genuinely said there was nothing wrong with me, and it yeah, it shows how I'm hoping the educational system is better now because autism's getting seen everywhere. But yeah, it wasn't nice.
Yeah. Um, and then another keep in mind, I want to say to parents, helping and preparing your child to be social, develop the social abilities and interest in all things being social actually should start at home. I don't know if you had family time where you play stuff, just hang out with your family and siblings. That's amazing. I think families should do that every day because that's going to help with learning how to play with peers at school. So actually we need to really encourage parents to play more at home, connect, and play board games and dinner conversations. So did your parents, were you able to do that as a child? Just were you just hang out and home is a safe environment for you?
I felt home was a safe environment, but because of this is the other reason why I said if your child is struggling at school to pull them out early, because I got bullied so much, it all came home, and then because I was in a safe environment, I then offloaded it, and because I offloaded it, my brother, my sister, everybody got a brunt of it at some point or another because I didn't know how to express it. But it was the only place I felt safe to open up, and unfortunately, that safe place was them. So I did have fun at home. I also had some really big meltdowns, and that's why these videos and us making this content is good, because it's trying to get people to see it early and hopefully prevent as much damage as possible that the outside world can produce.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a very, very important topic to discuss, the mainstreaming, and I think definitely uh, being with other people, if your child is ready, it's going to be helpful. But also just practicing social stuff with siblings as a family, that can be a really good foundation. So I think you're right though. If you're failing in school, then the behaviors at home will get worse because that you just let it all loose at home.
It's just it's a good reason that if you're a parent of an autistic child and you see
Yeah.
unknown actions and stress from them, and they have been to school, just think that it might not be the home that's causing it. It could just be school, and it's another reason to go and talk to the teachers or
Mm-hmm.
whoever you can.
Mm-hmm. You need a different plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about stims now. Stims, and I mean, we already kind of touched on the self-stim behavior, and stimming is one of the behaviors that we see. Um, uh, but the functions of stimming behaviors, it actually has a very important function. So can you talk about to us about stimming and why people stim?
So I do have stimming. It's not severe. I have it when I'm stressed. I can go into I have motor tics, so I can end up involuntary saying stuff. I also have almost like you have a frog in your throat. I just keep making like a coughing noise. So I'm less physical stimming, but I do know stimming is in a lot of autistic people, and I also know that stimming can be caused by stress, increased by stress. It can also just be an expression, as I was saying earlier. It can just be them trying to express themselves, especially if they're non-verbal. They're more likely to be showing it through stimming. So if your child's stimming and they're not hurting themselves, because I know that some do hit themselves, if they're not hitting themselves, not hurting themselves, then leave them to it. It's not hurting anybody. It's not hurting you. It's not hurting them. Obviously, if they are hitting themselves, biting themselves, lashing out, whatever it is, then you have to step in at some point, because that's not fair on them, and they might not be able to help it at all. And if they are stimming, try and read the environment, try and see what could have caused it. It could be something happy, as I said, or it could be stress. So you've got to try and keep an eye on their interactions and what's causing their movements, so that then you know whether to worry about it or not worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just learning your child as much as you can.
Yeah. So, from what I understand, stimming behaviors are coping mechanisms. It could be a coping mechanism. It could be the way a person react to a sensory stimuli. Like when you go to a concert and your body want to move,
Mhm.
to dance to the music, that you're reacting to all the sounds and watching what's going on. So stimming can be like that. It could be communication expressions for people who are minimally verbal, is to their way of, in a way, connecting with other people and sharing that I'm really excited about what's going on right now and I want to share it with you. um, it could be a sign of stress, I suppose, that it just comes out more. Let's see, did we cover all the bases? um, repetitive behavior also, like kind of the rigidity, going back to the same thing. That could be. It's not exactly stimming, but
I was speaking to a girl a while ago through YouTube that had really bad stimming, and she was asking for help, basically saying, "Oh,
mhm,
I'm hitting myself, I can't stop." Basically, I used a distraction tactic, which she said worked for her. Now, it might not work for everybody. Basically, what it is um, thinking. There's two options. So you can do a breathing technique, which is think of two colors. The color that you really hate. So for me, it's red. That's the negative color. That's the color I'm breathing out. And the positive
mhm,
color, which was purple, I'm breathing in. So what you do is you imagine, close your eyes and think, okay, I'm breathing in purple. I'm breathing out red, and just keep doing that. So what you
mhm,
do, basically telling your head, is the negative color is leaving your body, and you keep
mm,
doing it because you think about the color. You'll eventually forget what it was that what you were doing before. You'll distract yourself. That's one way to reduce it. I definitely know that works because she told me, and she had really bad stimming. And the other one is to distract yourself with your hands, because obviously stimming majority of the time is hands, arms, and if your hands are occupied with a toy or um, just something, a game console, whatever it is that you can focus on, that is
mhm.
another way to. And this isn't for people that are happy and not hurt themselves, but if you're hurting yourself, she was pinching herself and scratching herself, it was enough to take her hands away. It might have only distracted and stopped her for 15 minutes, but that 15 minutes she wasn't hurting herself. So it's things like that.
Yeah, those are really good tips to break the cycle,
Mhm.
I suppose, for some people. Um, I'm trying to give an advice to parents of young children, specifically on the stimming. So you already said that if they're not hurting themselves, stimming is actually a positive thing. Imagine if you don't have a stimming behavior as an outlet, how detrimental that could be, right? So, is there anything else we should tell parents of young kids who are just very hyper focusing on certain kind of stimming behaviors?
Um, well, not necessarily on the stimming, but in regards to just rather than focusing on the worry and worrying about that what it is that might go wrong, just
Hmm.
be happy with what they're happy with. As you said, if you're interacting with them and having something in common with them, that should be more important than any of the worries put together. Now, if the worries get to a certain level, obviously they need to be acknowledged. But if you're worrying, you will be miserable as a parent and you won't enjoy it and you'll stress yourself out. So, as hard as it is to not worry, try and enjoy the time you've got and enjoy the time you have with your autistic child. And then if something crops up, deal with it when it crops up.
Yeah. I also remember you told me a while back that the sensory profile changes as one grows up. So just because they're hand flapping today, it doesn't mean later on they're going to do the same. So some stimming behaviors do dissipate and it kind of comes and goes. Maybe the intensity, the frequency, it will change. So I think one important keep in mind for parents is that when you worry about your child's behavior, your child also feels it, and that's not good both ways, because imagine growing up having to do these stimming behaviors as an outlet, and of course other people would look at you because they don't know about autism. But if your parents constantly look at you and telling you don't do that, stop it, you know, and of course it depends on what kind of stimming behavior that is. Um, that could cause a lot of stress both ways, actually, not just to the parents or siblings, but also uh, to the child.
So yeah, with that public stimming, as you said, trying to tell them to stop is the worst thing you can possibly do. You've got a child, whoever has an autistic child, if they're stimming in public, they're autistic. That's part of them. Just accept it. Don't worry about what people are thinking, because people think horrible things about other people all the time, whether you've got a disability or not. And those people are the sad ones, the ones that are calling things out. So just enjoy your time with your autistic child and
Yeah,
don't worry.
exactly, exactly. Okay, so the next topic is more intervention better? Is it better if you have a young child, autistic young child, to just occupy this child's day with all kinds of activities and therapies? Is there such a thing as more is actually harmful?
I believe that putting too much in an autistic person's day isn't always good, because when it stops and the routine breaks and you can't fill the gap, you'll have a very, very big crisis on your hand, because they'll be stressing and they'll be wondering what they're going to do next. Obviously, activities during the day are good. Keeping them occupied is good. Educating them with activities is good, but break it up. They need to know that there can't be something every second of the day. I used to be like that. I'd be like, what we do next? Where are we going? Are we doing something now? And then my mum and dad were like, I can't keep giving you things to do. And luckily they didn't keep giving me things to do, because otherwise I would be a lot worse now.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a lot. You can't have too much of something.
Yeah. So more is not better. And doing everything possible under the sun and the moon, it's not better, because you do have a young child, and it's not that one child that you're trying to raise. You probably have other children to raise, and you've got your marriage, and you've got yourself to take care of. So I think more is not necessarily good for the child as well as the family. That's, what I believe. All right, so I think that probably covers more. One last topic, just one more, last one, is the belief that if a verbal language ability doesn't develop at the age of 5, then it's doomsday moving forward. So, what do you think about that? Because parents are often told that you've got to do everything you can before the age of 5. Otherwise, this child's not going to make any progress.
It's a very tough subject, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
A very sensitive one. So I am not a doctor. I'm not going to say a date or a year or however old they have to be. I also don't know if you can talk after that age. What I do know, and I've said it many times before, is if your child's nonverbal, that is your child still. Now, people will say, oh, you can try and educate them, you can try and trick them into talking, different things like that, using techniques. Don't worry about it. Seriously, just try and enjoy the time with your child. If they're going to talk, they're going to talk. But if they don't talk, you can have the closest bond with your child that you can ever imagine, because what you've got to do is then learn and read your child. They can't talk to you. You've got to learn and read your child. Now, when you grasp that and get that technique, you will feel like the closest person to them in the world, and there'll be nothing greater as a bond, because you're literally reading them. You're like, they're not telling you stuff, you're reading what their body language is doing. And I think that's a more special thing. And obviously they want their child to talk. I'm not going to say that they don't, and that I want their child to talk as well, but you've got to try and think of the positives. If it doesn't happen, there is still positives, and you can still have an amazing connection with your child just by having that bond.
Exactly. So I think the bond is a very important foundation, and communication is not just in form of verbal talking. So communication is, oh, there's somebody in the room now. Okay, I will admit the person. But that's a very important keep in mind. So a strong bond leads to communication, and that communication, is in different format, not just the spoken words.
Mhm.
So
Oh dear.
and yeah, so thank you so much, Ben. So if parents want to chat more with you and maybe ask you to help them understand more through live streaming, how do people contact you and find you?
Um, I've got Instagram, which is hashtag Life with Autism Ben with no spaces. Message me on there. I'll always answer. There's also a comment tab on my YouTube channel, which you can type in. If I put a message or a picture, you can comment under it. I'll see that as well. And I am on Twitter, but Twitter's a weird one because it's just awkward. So Instagram or YouTube is probably best.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
No
It's been
problem.
great. It's been so informative. I'm going to stop the recording.